doesn't it, students? Put your cell phones away. We have some very special guests with us today. I'm very excited to share that with you. So good morning. Welcome to the Columbia Middle School Veterans Day program. We're here today to pay tribute to our veterans and the impact they have made in ensuring the freedoms we so enjoy to keep us safe and secure. We welcome our esteemed veterans this morning and any other visitors with us today. Please stand for the presentation of colors by Evans High School JROTC. Please remain quiet during this time. From our CMS Beta Club to say the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, I would like to welcome the Evans High School JROTC Raider Drill Team.
fighting for our nation. But today we stand with them, taking pride, recognizing, and supporting those who put their lives on the line every day for our freedom. You're now watching what is called an exhibition drill show. An exhibition is the showcasing of military precision and discipline by performing complex movements using a 1903 Springfield rifle. Drill emerged out of the time when soldiers would march into battle and follow words of command from a commander in a single unit. Over time, complicated and visually pleasing rifle movements were perfected and created. More than 60 years ago, the United States Army Drill Team was created. It influenced the creation of drill teams in ROTC and JROTC programs across the country. Drill teams are a prime example of dedication and teamwork and personify the values and mission of the U.S. Army. Drill performances are meant to highlight and honor the valor and service of all members of the United States military and serve as a recognition of their sacrifice. When Americans view a drill show, they should feel a sense of pride, respect, honor, and loyalty for all members of the armed forces. Thank you.
Columbia Middle School 8th grade chorus. Chorus, band, our ASD students, and our Beta Club members. Our special guest this morning is Luciano Luis C. Graziano. Mr. Graziano was 20 years old when he was drafted into the Army in 1943. He was part of the third wave of soldiers to hit the sands at Omaha Beach, France, on D-Day, June 6, 1944, during World War II. This offensive reopened the second front in Europe against Nazi Germany. Of the 5 beaches in the D-Day offensive, only Omaha Beach was in danger of complete defeat. Of the troops that landed on Omaha Beach, 2,000 to 5,000 men were killed, wounded, or missing. It was only through the courage of the men on the beach that turned that initial disaster into an eventual victory. After landing at Omaha Beach in June, he went on to fight during the Battle of the Bulge, the largest battle fought by American troops during World War II. Between December 16, 1944 to January 25, 1945, American troops fought to push back the German offensive in the Ardennes, Belgium. American forces suffered 80,000 casualties during the winter offensive. Mr. Graziano witnessed the unconditional surrender of the German Army at 2:41 a.m. on May 7, 1945, at General Eisenhower's headquarters, a red brick schoolhouse in Reims, France. Attaining the rank of Master Sergeant, Mr. Graziano met the girl of his dreams, Bobby, who was a WAC, Women's Army Corps, with the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Forces. They were married in France and were happily married for 62 years. Mr. Graziano is also a published author, having written about his experiences in A Patriot's Memoirs of World War II, Through My Eyes, Heart, and Soul. He was the keynote speaker at the Eisenhower Foundation for the 75th anniversary of D-Day on June 6, 2019. Recently, Mr. Graziano, the last surviving witness of the German surrender to the Allies, was awarded the French Legion of Honor by the French Consul of Atlanta on September 17th of this year. Mr. Graziano joins a select group of Americans that includes Alexander Graham Bell, Dwight D. Eisenhower, and Douglas MacArthur to be awarded the French Legion of Honor. Please give Mr. Louis Graziano a warm welcome. Mr. Graziano, it's an honor to have you here with us today, and this is a very special moment for our students, our staff, and our families, and we just wanted you to share one of your many stories with us.
Well, when I landed at Omaha Beach invasion, I was the third wave in there. I drove a gasoline truck off the LST onto the shore and jumped into the water and crawled my way up under the cliff. When I got under the cliff, the Germans were up on top of the cliff shooting down at us. I got the flamethrower out and I shot the flame underneath that cliff and put that all on fire underneath where the machine gun was, and got that one out of the way. Then there was another machine gun up there, so I shot a flare up in the sky, and I knew the Navy would know what I wanted, and they got the message and they shot and got that gun out of the way. And then I had it laying down underneath the cliff, and the Rangers were the first ones to climb up the cliff, which was 100 feet high. And after they climbed, I had 30 men. I told my men to follow me up the cliff, and the ones that didn't have guns, go down there and get you one off the dead soldiers. They lost their guns when they was trying to get in the beach because they had so much equipment stuff on them. They had to turn them loose in the water, otherwise they would have drowned. So they did. They followed me up the cliff, and we fought our way all the way to St. Louis. From St. Louis, we kept fighting on until we got to Reims, France. And when we got to Reims, General Thrasher told me to go get some supplies for the troops. So I went, two of my men, to one of the supply places to get the stuff, and the Frenchman would not sell it to us. I said, we're here to fight for your country, and you don't want to sell it to us? So I went back to camp, I got me 4 men, went back to the supply place, told my So we didn't have no trouble with them. Then from there on, taking a break. Anyway, my book. Okay. In 1995, I went ahead and mentioned children wanted me to write a book about my war experiences. So I went ahead and to make the book up, all the time I was in the service, I'd make a little note, put it in the box. So when I got ready to write the book, I got the notes out, and we wrote everything in each note what it said. Then we put the book together. So I got it published, and I'm presenting one to the library here, and one to one book, right? A few weeks ago, I went meeting with President Trump on his program that he had. He is a great man. And
Mr. Graziano, on behalf of the faculty and staff and students of Columbia Middle, I would like to thank you for being with us today so that we may honor you as a veteran and last surviving witness of the German surrender in 1945. I'd like to present you with this certificate to commemorate our gratitude for your service to our nation and for sharing your wonderful story and being here with us today. Thank you for your service. Let's give them a round of applause. Present you something from the library. Have a seat and remain quiet, please. One more time for Mr. Graziano.
He is also a graduate of the Army's Prestigious Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas in 1977. He and his wife, Vivian, a retired elementary school principal, have 3 sons, 1 daughter, 11 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. During his distinguished military career as an infantry officer in the United States Army, he commanded troops from platoon through brigade level. He also held key staff positions from battalion through Department of the Army levels at camps and stations all over the United States, Western Europe, and the Republic of South Vietnam. Colonel Sylvester was highly decorated for both his heroism and Vietnam combat operations against enemies of our nation, and for his service of other non-combat related assignments. In 1991, he retired from active duty after serving for 27 years plus in the defense of our country. Following his career, Colonel Sylvester had another 27-year career as an educator in Richmond and Columbia counties. He taught math, was awarded Teacher of the Year honors, and served as a guidance counselor at Sango Middle School in Richmond County. He then served as a guidance counselor at Greenbrier High School here in Columbia County until his final retirement in 2018. Please join me in giving Colonel Sylvester a warm Columbia Middle School welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graziano, and good morning, Columbia Middle School. It gives me great pleasure to be here today to speak to you about the significance of Veterans Day. However, before I begin, please let me say just a few words here to Mr. Graziano and a few words to you about Mr. Graziano. Sir, I am deeply honored to be in your presence because I know that you and your generation defeated the evils of Nazism, fascism, and imperialism, and that resulted in our great victory in World War II. And because of that great victory in World War II, the United States became the leader of the free world, a superpower, and what President Reagan called a country that is known as a shining city on a hill. Now, sir, we cannot repay you for what you have done for our country, but for me, as one veteran to another, I'd like to present you with my most heartfelt salute, which is a symbol of my deepest respect and admiration. Thank you for what you did. Veterans Day. We will begin with a brief history and conclude with why we celebrate our veterans every year on the 11th day of November. We will then conclude. This will take from 10 to 12 minutes. Therefore, the presentation will move rather quickly. So in order for you to grasp the significance of my remarks, I'm going to ask for your undivided attention. So let's begin with the brief history lesson. The most destructive wars of the 20th century were World Wars I, II, the Korean War, and the war in Vietnam. The unknown honored American dead from those wars are buried in Washington, D.C. at Arlington National Cemetery in the Tomb of the Unknowns. However, in 1998, the remains from the war in Vietnam were identified as those of Air Force First Lieutenant Michael Joseph Blasey, a pilot who was shot down in 1972. So his remains were then removed from Arlington and turned over to his family in Missouri for reburial. Now, to honor the men who are still buried there, men who are symbolic of all of our nation's wars, an honor guard from the Army's 3rd Infantry Regiment, nicknamed the Old Guard because it's the longest serving active duty regiment keeps a day and night vigil at this tomb of the unknowns. Now, there are only 3 unknowns there because of the advancements of DNA testing and other scientific breakthroughs. There are or have been no other unknowns to be buried. Now, let's take a look at how we arrived at this point in Arlington. To do that, we must go all the way back to World War I. World War I was called the War to End All Wars, but we'll see about that. Between 1914 and 1918, armed combat raged across the continents of the world. Never before in warfare had there been such a loss of life as there had been during World War I. There were millions of casualties worldwide. The United States alone lost over 50,000 dead and over 200,000 wounded, and we were in the war for only 1 year, between 1917 and 1918. Mercifully, World War I ended at 11 a.m. on November the 11th, 1918, a day recognized as Armistice Day, the 11th hour of the 11th day in the 11th month of that year. Now, as time went by, on November the 11th, 1920, to commemorate the sacrifices of World War I, with the idealistic hope that it was the war to end all wars, the remains of unknown soldiers from England and France were brought from the battlefields to their home countries and buried in their national places of honor. For England, that's Westminster Abbey, and for France, that's the Arc de Triomphe. For America, that burial took place on November the 11th, 1921 at Arlington National Cemetery. Now, even though our allies recognized November the 11th as Armistice Day, it was not until 1926, by virtue of a congressional resolution, did America officially recognize November 11th as Armistice Day, and it became a national holiday in 1938. Sadly, however, we know that warfare did not end in 1918. World War II started in 1939. In the 50s, we had the Korean War. Vietnam came in the 60s, and there were other lesser conflicts continuing on throughout the 20th century and indeed into the 21st century. So, from 1926, as the decades passed, in 1954, to honor all veterans who served and continue to serve to this day, the United States Congress changed the name of Armistice Day to Veterans Day. Therefore, every year at 11 a.m. on November the 11th, a combined color guard at Arlington National Cemetery, representing all of our armed forces, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard, honors our veterans by rendering a movement called Present Arms at the Tomb of the Unknowns. Present Arms is a combination of hand salutes and rifle salutes, a symbol of honor and respect. The nation's tribute is further symbolized at that ceremony by the playing of taps, speeches, the firing of cannons, musical selections, and the laying on of a presidential wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns. Now, these kinds of ceremonies take place in towns and cities all across America, much like what we're doing here today. So that concludes the brief history lesson. Now let's examine exactly why so much pomp and circumstance is directed at our veterans, both the living and the deceased. To begin with, many Americans take our way of life for granted. But our way of life is not the norm around the world. So we want to take a look now at the exceptionalism of our country. As Americans, we enjoy the highest standard of living in the world. Now, I know this firsthand because during my almost 28 years of active service, I served in countries all over the world, so I have a firm basis for comparing our way of life with the way of life of others. Now, let's take a quick look at some of this exceptionalism. Now, today, spite of our economy's recent downturn. America's economic system is still the engine that drives the world's economy. Our agricultural system provides food that feeds us as well as the rest of the world, and people come from many other nations to receive treatment in our medical facilities and to attend our educational institutions. These are but a few examples of our nation's exceptionalism. Now, why is it that way? The answer is very simple. Capitalism, the free enterprise system, and the entrepreneurial spirit of our citizens have all been able to develop and flourish because of our military's ability to secure our freedoms. Indeed, all of us sleep safely in our beds at night because our military stands ready to severely punish all of those who would harm us. And the free nations of the world want a strong America, the kind of America that saved Western Europe in World Wars I and II, helped free Eastern Europe during the Cold War, and saved the Korean Peninsula, most of Southeast Asia, and most of Latin America from a complete communist takeover. Thousands died and were wounded during these conflicts, and we owe them all a debt of gratitude that cannot be repaid. So as I finish my remarks, just let me say that today we honor every man and woman who served in our armed forces, as well as those who continue to serve today. All of these people are called veterans. And I must say that I am proud of the fact that I spent almost 28 years of my life as an active duty infantry officer in the United States Army, doing my part to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and our American way of life. And like the veterans of yesterday, today's military continues to keep us safe and secure. In conclusion, you have no doubt heard the expression that freedom is not free. So, as you watch television, play video games, attend football games, shop at the mall, attend the church of your choice, and continue to pursue your education, an education that will allow you to fulfill your dreams for a successful future. Perhaps, just perhaps, by what you have heard today, you now have a deeper appreciation for the expression that freedom is not free, because past veterans have bought that freedom for you, and today's veterans maintain that freedom for you. Now, students, that concludes my remarks. Thank you very much for your attention. Remember our veterans, and remember that freedom is not free. Thank you very much.
Students, I had the privilege of meeting Colonel Sylvester my first few years of teaching, and he has become a dear friend, one of my favorite veterans, and we have had a privilege having these two men with us today. Please give both of them a round of applause. Thank you for your service, Colonel. America endures because of the men and women who have put on the uniforms of our armed forces: Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, and Coast Guard. Men and women who have put their lives on the line to protect the land we love and the freedoms which we enjoy and sometimes take for granted. Because of its proximity to Fort Gordon, Columbia Middle School has had a long history of faculty members who have served in the armed forces, spouses who have served or are serving in our country's services branches, as well as other family members who have served. At this time, I would like to honor two of our faculty members who have served in the armed forces. Mr. Anthony Walsh served in the U.S. Army. Please give him a round of applause at this time. Miss Jamie Britt for serving in the Air Force. Thank you both for your service. The military also affects the student body here at Columbia Middle School to a great extent. We have approximately 50% of our student body whose parent, or possibly both parents, are presently serving or have served in one of the military branches. If you are here in the gym, we also have students watching through live stream in the classroom. If you have a parent or teachers, if you have a spouse or child presently serving in the armed forces, please stand. Please remain standing for me. If you have a parent who has served in the armed forces, please stand. Teachers, if you have a parent who served in the armed forces, please stand. If you have a relative who has served in the military, please stand up. Please keep standing. If you look to your left, look to your right, and look behind and in front of you, you will see how the military impacts Columbia Middle School. You may be seated at this time. The men and women in our armed forces make sacrifices for the freedoms that we enjoy as a nation. You, as children of the men and women who serve, make sacrifices of your own. When a parent's deployed or not there in the important moments of your life, we as a faculty thank you for the sacrifices you have made and will continue to make to allow your parents to serve our country. We would like to thank each and every one of our faculty members, spouses, family members, and our military families for your service. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our 8th grade band.
who have served our country honorably during war or peace. Veterans are parents, children, grandparents, friends, neighbors, and co-workers, and are an important part of our communities. Today we've honored the last person to have witnessed the surrender of the German army to Allied forces in World War II. That was so cool. He's an important part of our CSRA community, Mr. Graciano. Our keynote speaker, Colonel Sylvester, veteran and veteran educator in our school system, is a vital member of our community as well. There are 19 million veterans, 11% who are women. Some of those 19 million are parents of our students and important contributing members of our school and community. As we contemplate the full meaning of what it meant to be a veteran, or what it means to be a veteran, the impact they have not only in the defense of our country, but the contributions they make to our community, remember that those freedoms we enjoy are because of the sacrifices they make on our behalf each and every day. And remember what Colonel Sylvester said, freedom is not free. Veterans, thank you so much for your service. Parents, thank you so much for coming out. Just, if you see someone, and so many people stood up, hug them, hug a veteran. Thank them so much for what they've done and the sacrifices they've made. So this concludes our Veterans Day program. Students, maintain your seats. We'll let you know how we're gonna release. Thank you so much for your sacrifices again, veterans. At this time, if you're a parent,